I'll never forget the moment. I was on my way to the market and I walk into the market, and right before I walk in, I see these two younger kids in high school. It's raining, they're underneath the overhang, and they said, "Hey, mister, would you care to donate to our baseball club?"
What piece of their story made you feel like, okay, there's something to this?
There's a part of an emotional pull there. At the same time, a sense of dignity in the fact that they're out there in the rain trying to do their best to promote the donation, the sponsorship.
What is the team made up of? How did you get to that point and choose who you needed?
For Sports Hero, it's all about the story, right? And it's not just the story about us. I'm so excited to share the stories about other athletes. The next plan is to launch the MVP just in time for winter sports. And if you can somehow convey a feeling with a logo or a brand, then you're going to instantly either attract more people or you're going to push people away.
Welcome to episode 1 of the New Age of Branding podcast. The goal here is to talk about how brand building has evolved after COVID and how you might need less than you think to build a brand in the modern age. I'll be starting this off with a series called Founding Stories, where I talk to founders of emerging SaaS and tech startups to learn from their experience and illustrate how the world of marketing and branding has evolved. In this first episode, I'll be talking to Manuel Solis, who's the founder of Sports Hero. This is an online platform that makes funding and sponsorships of athletes really, really easy. So in this episode, we'll be talking to Manuel on how Sports Hero used the past year to come back stronger and how you can learn from their experience to go from 0 to 1 as a startup.
And it was raining one night and in the evening, and I walk into the market, and right before I walk in, I see these two younger kids in high school. And it's raining, they're underneath the overhang, and they said, "Hey, mister, would you care to donate to our baseball club?" And I stopped for a second and I thought, well, what is this? What am I donating? And they said, well, if you donate $20, you end up with a little coupon book. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I don't care too much about the coupon book, but I care about these kids who I don't even know and their passion for baseball, because here they are sitting in the rain trying to get money. And so I asked them the question. I didn't just give them the money to get them to scurry off. I said, so, hey, let me ask you a question. What is this money used for? And they responded, I got both of their attention, because one of them was on the other route. He was like on the exit route, and the other one was on the entrance route of the market. Yeah. This other boy comes up, and they both start talking to me, and they're so enthusiastic because they obviously have somebody interested in listening to what their story is. And they said, well, we need new baseball gloves and bats, and we need new gear. And I go, well, what school do you guys go to? And they said, we go up the street. And I said, wow, that's cool. I said, yeah, you know what? How do I do this? And so proceeded to go ahead and use my phone to go on the website and do the donation. To this day, I still have that coupon book. I never used a single coupon out of it. And so that is really kind of the genesis of where it started, was my desire to think there's got to be a better way to help these kids who are either standing out in the middle of the rain asking for money, doing car washes. Those are great things and great ideas, selling cookies or whatever it might be. But there's got to be a better, easier, more fun way to get these kids more enthusiastic about how to raise money. So long-winded, that's kind of the genesis of where it all started.
And I assume you saw yourself in those kids too. And kind of what piece of their story, I mean, as they were telling you about it, you were saying one's trying to exit, one's trying to enter. What piece of their story made you feel like, okay, there's something to this. I want to focus on this. Was it seeing yourself in it, or was there something else?
For me, I definitely saw myself, but there was a part of me I felt bad, right? Yeah. There was an emotional heartstring pull there where I was thinking to myself, these kids should not be out in the rain. They should be, maybe helping mom cook dinner or something, not out here in the rain. So there's a part of an emotional pull there. At the same time, a sense of dignity in the fact that they're out there in the rain. A lot of kids just sit back playing Call of Duty and expect money to just fall from the sky. But here they are, they're out there trying to do their best to promote the donation or the sponsorship for the money raising. So
you're coming in now with Sports Hero and you're looking to make it easier. What were those initial steps like? So now you have the idea, you have the spark. What was it like trying to get maybe a team together, if you got one together initially, or what was it like just trying to pitch this idea to somebody?
Yeah, no, I'll never forget it. It's as vivid as I can possibly imagine. I'll never forget tapping one of my colleagues at a company that we both were working at, and it was a beautiful summer day. And I said, "Hey, can we go around the block and go talk for a minute? I've got an idea." And so we're walking. It's beautiful, and I start sharing with him what I experienced, but also the idea around this platform. And having come from an extreme sports background as this individual who I was talking to, who was also professionally sponsored by a snowboard company back in his younger days. So I knew that if I shared this idea, that he would either say, "Great idea," or he would say, "Yeah, yeah, that's not going to work out." But he immediately said, let's talk about this more. Obviously, we could have
That's
talked
family.
about it for hours,
Yeah.
but it had resulted in with, well, maybe we'll meet up this weekend. We'll talk more about it because we've got to go work. We got to go
Right.
back to who's paying us money right now and go do
Yeah.
our job. And so that was, again, how I shared the idea with others. And then it just kind of cascaded from there to talk, getting more vocal about it with other people and saying,
Right.
"Hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think?" And getting real live feedback from these people.
And that must be the best feeling too, when you see someone's eyes light up over your idea, when you, even if it's
Yeah.
like an offer or whatever it might be, you come and see that and you immediately get this sense of internal motivation for yourself too. And you just want to keep moving, keep moving.
Yeah,
Um,
for
so
sure.
what was that like? I mean, that first year, because I know we talked before a little bit and you said that
Yeah.
you had been essentially pitching to try to get funding. And then there was a shift that happened at some point. So what was it like initially, and when did that shift happen in terms of how you were pitching the idea?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, the part of that, to your point about getting excited about seeing other people excited about your own idea, as we started to really kind of map out the idea and the framework and the workflows and all of the things that we started to think about, and to the point where we would even meet up on Saturday morning, we'd go and sit down at a breakfast joint for 2 hours at a time. And the people at the work at the restaurant would look at the three guys sitting in this restaurant with our laptops open at 7 in the morning, like, who are these guys? What are they doing here? They're barely even eating their breakfast. The eggs are getting cold
Just
because we were
completely
just
lost in
hammering
it.
away,
Yeah.
right? We were
Yeah.
too excited about what we were trying to build.
Right.
And and this is going back, almost 4 years ago. We got to the point where we started to really think, okay, what is next? Like, how do we take this from the inception of the idea to launch? And
Yep.
as we started to get closer to figuring out who was going to develop the platform and what we were going to name the company and all of these other interesting things that end up happening throughout that life cycle in the beginning, um, unfortunately, the world saw COVID, right? And so we knew at that moment, at that very moment when COVID broke, that nobody was playing sports. And so everyone didn't know what was going on. So we knew at that moment we had to put a pause on the project. And so it was a moment of pause, but also not losing hope of getting out of what the world experienced, but even if and when we'll ever do this again. So that was the interesting kind of pivot on what was originally just as a pause to here we are this
Yeah.
year speeding it up.
So what was that like? I mean, I know a lot of people went through that feeling of, oh shit, I got to put everything on hold. And now I don't really know what to do, but I don't want to lose hope. So how did
Right.
you put yourself in that position where you don't lose hope? What was the thing that you kept holding on to for that year, maybe 2 years where we were completely in lockdown? Um,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
when you got out and started now the past year or so, how have things been speeding up? How has that change in mindset kind of taken shape?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it I'll give credit to, my son, who to this day at the age of 19, he uh, went very far in soccer, got to the level of collegiate, won some
Oh, that's awesome.
championships at city levels and even almost state level.
Wow.
And having seen him go through that post COVID, and when things started to get a little bit more normalized for everyone around the world, you started to see people playing sports. And so part of that hope and part of that dream still was being lit inside of me, saying, okay, this will eventually happen at some point, but let me just give the limelight to my kids and let them experience what it's like. Because as you know, or as a lot of people know, when you go down this path of having an idea and wanting to start a company, and go down this founder's path, or whatever you want to call it, you're not just doing it alone. You're taking your family with you. You're taking your friends with you. There's a lot of the normal things that you do that end up kind of getting put on pause because all of your focus and attention goes towards this idea, or this, this dream, or this vision of building this company. And so, early this year in February, I would say end of February, March timeframe, I had that choice that was presented, and it said was you either go down the path of going and working for another company again and doing what you do, for what you have been doing for many years, or you go dust the covers off, of what was something you thought about 4 years ago, and revive it,
Yeah.
and then start over, not from ground zero, but start over in the sense of reassess the market, reassess the idea with even a new set of people.
Right.
And those new people that I was assessing the idea with were people that I either have worked with intimately, were a part of my team, or I was a part of their team. And so, and I respected their craft that they were really good at, whether that was running global teams, running global marketing teams, operations,
Yeah.
and literally coming to these people and saying, hey, I've got this idea, I want to share this with you. And that's kind of how it all started again, reboot this
Right.
year, right? In February. So
Brings up the whole idea of building a brand dynamically, in the sense of like, hey, we'll put something out there, we'll see what people think, we'll get their opinions, and we'll adjust, and we'll share how we've changed. And you kind of keep doing that adjustment, until you get to where you're trying to be. Do you feel like, at least from what I've seen, I feel like that's very different than how building out a brand was 5 to 10 years ago, where it was more of like, let's research for 6 months and set up everything perfectly and then launch. Have you noticed that change?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's important because it's a collective mindset approach to creating something that's awesome, right? And that's ultimately, not only does it stem from creating the brand, but it also is a complement to creating the company that you want to create, which ultimately then promotes creating a product that you want to provide the market, right? If you start off with the collective mindset, then not only will it be a collective mindset that people want to understand and be a part of, but then it leads to other people globally and around the world that also want to be a part of that as well, right? I'm not saying some of the brands, household brands that we know about today, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or they've changed their brands, or whatever that might be. But to your point, it was more of like, here's the brand, and that's the name of the brand. And yes, we might change the colors and whatnot, but that's the brand.
Right.
And not saying that they didn't have any research, but I do feel like bringing other people from various backgrounds, and that literally was what I did. I am not kidding when I say I talked to a neighbor who I barely knew, and I said, "Hey, here are the five names that we've thought about. Which one do you like?" And they would literally circle, or they'd say, "I like that one." And it was interesting to hear. And I would also ask them, "Why do you like that one?" Well, it's because it's this or that, right? It's more welcoming, or it's more energetic, or whatever it might be, right? So I do think that having other people be a part of creating that brand, and at least getting that initial feedback from other people, will help kind of guide you into really what resonates with people, because you want someone to look at your brand and have a feeling attached to the brand, right? And if you can somehow convey a feeling with a logo or a brand, then you're going to instantly either attract more people, or you're going to push people away, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, so I couldn't agree more with that, especially with the whole idea that the word brand is kind of becoming less and less ambiguous over time. I've especially noticed this with other founders who maybe just got funding, or even what you're talking about here with, I don't like the name, or, I need you to change the name. That's the whole idea of like, now people see that branding isn't ambiguous. It's more of a reputation, and you can influence that reputation. But there's also this idea when it comes to building a brand dynamically and bringing your audience into the story. There's the idea of vetting advice and choosing what advice is good and what advice you shouldn't be taking. Do you have some sort of mindset or maybe a process that you're following?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any magic formula or any kind of recipe. I
Yeah.
would say I like to just cast the net as wide as I can to as many people and get that initial feedback so that I can understand and really kind of weigh it all out, right? And say to myself or say to the team, okay, so it looks like 70% of the market or the amount of people we've surveyed are leaning towards this. And here are the reasons why.
Yeah.
And it's not just because they like the name, but it's because of the name, the logo, maybe even the colors, but also what chord is it striking inside of them, right?
Yeah.
And you start to really kind of call out some of those buzzwords. It's emotional, it's positive, it's uplifting, it's right? And then on the flip side, I actually have done this as well, which is why don't you like this one, right? Like, so you like this one, that's cool, but can you explain to me why didn't you choose this one? Because the person yesterday chose that one for a variety of different reasons. And so now you get a good view of like, okay, so here are the reasons as to why.
Right. You're putting a story behind all the numbers, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really a great way of doing it. And I completely agree with you. If somebody would ask you, what's your story? What's the story behind this? What would you say?
Yeah, the story is there are a lot of young athletes out there that want to play sports, and we're giving them the platform to receive the funding to go out there and get in the game, right?
Yeah.
And so without sharing more than that, it almost is a hook because you're not letting it all out and you're not vomiting all over them either. Because, you know, truth be told, like my heart of hearts, like I'm a sales guy, right? So me pitching in an elevator, the whole concept that can give me your elevator pitch. I've had to do that my entire career, right? Because I've been a sales guy and I'll always be a sales guy. So and I think it's changing that mindset because you have to think about it in a different way rather than, and this is just in my humble opinion. Yeah. It's almost like what Hollywood does to the trailers, right? Or sometimes even with the Netflix series, they tease you. They give you this whole like, hey, this is what this show is all about. And then you either go, oh, that looks good. Like I might want to watch that. Yeah. Or you're like, next, right? And and it's a good example. I'm watching this series on Netflix called Quarterback, and it talks about, you know, a couple of the 3 quarterbacks that have had an amazing journey in the NFL. And I swear to you, like the first 30 seconds of like the teaser trailer, when you're hovering over the videos of the movie or the series, I was like, oh yeah, I like that. Yeah. So I look at it very similar to that. So what I just shared with you as far as the story, the initial trailer, would hope to get somebody to go, either I've got time, share with me more, or do you have a website? Can I go to your website? Or yeah, it's sportshero.org. You know, let me know. You ping me an email. And so they're hooked because they want to know more of what you meant by some of the buzzwords that you just shared. Sports, funding, youth sports, collaboration. What? I don't understand that. I want to know more. So you don't vomit all over them, right? You just share with them a little bit to get them hooked.
And what do you think gets somebody? So like you're watching that 30-second trailer, right? That teaser on Netflix. What exactly is getting you to say, oh, I like that, in your opinion?
It's a little bit of the emotional heartstring pull for me, right? It's the not necessarily rose from the streets to riches or rags to riches story. It's more of hard work, focus, determination, you know, drive, because all of those things are something that we do in our daily life, right? Whether you are working for a company or you're being a father to children, or it doesn't matter, like focus, drive, you know, humility and being all gratitude, all of those things really are the basics, right? It's like back to basics. What is it really? Like what are we here for? What are we trying to do?
And that's exactly how I see even like the whole kind of like new age branding idea. The whole thing of like that's what a brand is today. that feeling of like when you look at something, or like you look at the teaser, you look at a website or a social media post, whatever, and you get that feeling of, I resonate with, that determination that they have, or the drive that they have. And I feel like that's kind of where the world is going, over the traditional mission statements that brands used to have, or like plastering your values across the wall, which is great, but it's not what we're heading towards. And we're heading more towards resonating with an audience and resonating with people.
Yeah.
Is that something you've noticed too while you're talking to investors, or just other people for advice?
Yeah, absolutely. And even and to your point, a lot of people plaster their mission, their core values, and all these things right out the gate.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
sad part is they don't even live up to their mission or core values anymore, right? So it's
Exactly.
kind of like, why are you putting it up there? It's false advertising right out the gate.
Yep, exactly.
So for me, at least for Sports Hero, it's all about the story, right? And it's not just the story about us. I'm so excited to share the stories about other athletes on our website, right?
Yeah.
And really, I even look forward to the day where we have kind of seen a young youth individual go from using Sports Hero from the very beginning and end up making it professional. Like if that ends up becoming a reality, like, I mean, wow. I mean, in itself, right? So
Amazing.
and that's really what it comes down to, and at least for us, it's about making sure that we resonate with what they're trying to do, because it's not about us.
Right.
At the end of the day, we're providing a platform for them. So if you can somehow figure out and touch them and understand what it is that they need to help them to make a positive impact in their life, then you might have a lifetime customer right out the gate, right?
Yeah.
So it's super huge to not go and not necessarily talk all about how great you are.
Right.
I mean, think about, all of the great brands, Apple. Look how Apple, when you open up your iPhone, like, isn't it an experience? Like, you're like, whoa, you almost keep the box and the wrapping and all the stuff that's inside, because even though you're using your phone, you're like, this is amazing, right? Yeah. So you want it to be an experience. You have to really think about it, not just kind of mash up something that you think kind of fits and sits well with the market.
I know it's still relatively early and you're still kind of getting through the initial stages, but what do you feel has been the progression so far of understanding kind of this new digital age we're in terms of branding and building out that narrative? Have you had any lessons come up along the way where you're like, oh, this is definitely super important when it comes to building a brand?
Yeah. Man, it might sound really, really silly. I'm going to say this, but it's like somewhat less is more, right? Like, talk less, and your brand should be able to speak on its own, whatever it might be. And it may take time. Rather than talking to you, it's also important to really share a story. Like, talk about the story. People love stories, and people love to hear positive stories. We all like to feel good, at least I hope. And when you start to incorporate that approach, I always like to say to not only people I talk to, but my own family, is what you do. You have two options. It either positively affects other people, or it negatively affects other people. And so if you think about every step you make, what am I doing right now? Is it positively affecting? Maybe it's just yourself, but is it positively affecting myself and other people, or is it negatively affecting other people? And what is the outcome that I want? Hopefully it's positive. Hopefully you want a positive outcome every day out of your life. But I think that's also what's really important is really getting in tune with your heart, and really getting in tune with being able to share some real life experience without any judgment, really just saying, hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing, right? I mean, and that resonates with a lot of people a lot faster than saying, well, we've got this thing that's going to do this and XYZ and this,
right.
It's different.
And what do you think is the best way to do that now? Because I know there's kind of a rise in the idea of like DIY marketing, in the sense of like, hey, me as the founder, I'm going to build out a personal brand on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever. And through that personal brand, or through my company's brand, I'm going to build out my whole marketing or my whole content strategy myself, or with my team. Have you kind of followed that similar approach or planning a similar approach to that? And how do you look at marketing your business and getting it out there outside of word of mouth?
Yeah, I think marketing is super important. I think that you might have a great idea, you might have a great product, and you might be really good at a lot of things, right? But I do believe that when you harness other companies or other people's crafts and they're really good at it,
Yep.
you incorporate them into what you're doing, you've just accelerated the ability to get out there faster, right? Not to say that you can't do it alone and your team couldn't do it,
Mhm.
but if you see or come across or you end up getting connected with some other entity, or maybe it's another individual who's got his or her own thing, and they've got this craft that they have just honed in on so well that could complement your efforts, what you're doing with your team,
Right.
and you bridge those two together, you become unstoppable in the market. You want to talk about noise? Yeah, you could make noise on your own. You can become viral, but how fast do you want to become viral, right? And it's all about speed. And when you scale at speed, you could do it alone, but I do think it's a lot more effective because you're also creating a validity with someone else and
Yeah.
another entity who has their own network and their own set of people that, so you end up kind of creating this spider web effect when you incorporate other companies that are really good at, let's say, blog writing, and
Right.
then another company is good at videography, and another company is really good at whatever it might be,
Right.
doing PR, writing articles, whatever that might be, right?
Right.
Some companies have them all. And so I think, yeah, could we do it all alone? Sure. But are we really good at it? No. We're not
Yeah.
going to try to kid ourselves.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. And I agree with that in the sense of like, don't try to do everything all at once. But if you can handle the core stuff internally, definitely do it internally. I think it's the way to go. And you brought up the team a couple times. I'm just wondering, like, what is the team made up of? How did you get to that point and choose who you needed by your side up until
Yeah.
this point?
Yeah. It goes back to something I alluded earlier in the conversation, which was I literally approached people who I respect in the
Yeah.
industry, who I've worked with alongside, and maybe there have been years of even contact, but it was that moment where I said, okay, I need to build this foundation with some core concrete, like if you're building a house, and some pillars, right? I need some real solid people that know what they are doing and they're really good at their craft.
Right.
And so I literally called up each person that I thought were amazing and I fully respect, and I shared with them this idea. And as much as I personally and selfishly wanted them in our first conversation to say, I'm in,
Yeah.
they didn't, right? They said, let me get back to you. Yeah, let me think about it. Let me noodle on it. And I said, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for your time.
Right.
Not knowing really the outcome, right? They're not my best friends. They're not,
Yeah.
one of the individuals was my CRO, my own boss at one point, right? So it was like, it was a
Yeah.
very interesting conversation. And all of them said, yeah, within about a week or week and a half, they all came back and said, I'm in. What do I need to do? And I just was like, no way. Is this really happening?
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. Like everybody is literally every single person I have approached have said to me, where I'm in, what can I do to help? And so here we are, right?
And I think that's such a recent thing of like, especially when it comes to like a tech startup or something where you're building a platform. I don't feel like you need those incubator services anymore, where it's like, hey, we'll help you find a co-founder, or you have to pay us $10,000 to build the MVP or whatever. Rather than that, now you can put together these teams of people that you know and have built a relationship with and just put something out there. I mean, like social media is
Yeah,
free, building a website is basically free. All this stuff is
yeah,
pretty much free now and very, very
yeah,
accessible. And
yeah.
fully, applaud the way you're doing it. I think that's the way to build a brand today, is kind of through this iterative process rather
Yeah.
than overwhelming yourself with like a 50-person team right off the bat, like tons of research, debt, and everything.
Yeah,
It's
it's
really
true.
changed.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that part of what you just shared is the one word that seems to be resonating in my mind right now is don't be afraid,
Yeah,
right? Don't be afraid of somebody stealing your idea or like,
exactly.
oh, if I should, you have to sign an NDA. No, you don't. I
Yeah,
mean, your idea is a great idea. It doesn't matter if it's the only idea or if it's the only one to market, but
yeah,
don't be afraid. So I wouldn't have, I mean, but you asked me, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said anything. I would have been
right.
like, well, I've got this secret thing that I don't want to share with you. And they're
Exactly.
like, well, why not?
Yeah.
Well, you have to sign an NDA. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you don't already trust me. So we're already going
Right.
on the wrong step here. Like, if you
Exactly.
don't trust me, why am I going to work with you? Right.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what
it's,
I've seen too, even online. Like you see certain brands, they'll do this whole thing of like, we're hiding everything that we're doing. We're not going to share much of what we're working on or what our team looks like behind the scenes. Instead, we'll share all these like super high quality ads, or like they're not letting people in, which makes it really inauthentic, and it ruins trust. So you see it kind of between, one-on-one conversations and even online in terms of how marketing is changing. We're going into 2024 now. What's
yeah.
the plan for the next year, and then maybe the overall vision?
I think next plan is to launch the MVP just in time for winter sports in the beginning of next year, and then learn a lot from getting a pulse check on all the athletes that are using the platform. Inevitably, we're going to see some inherent missteps on the flows and some errors on the coding because that's how software is built. But I think it's going to be important for us to learn through those experiences of all the good and all the bad. But I think ultimately the vision is to ultimately expand into global markets, because the sports world is a worldwide market, and it's a market that is, at least for youth sports, it's underserved. And so, part of that is to be able to, yet again, as I mentioned earlier, just to get more kids playing more sports. Just getting out there in the game and playing sports is ultimately, what we envision. For at least for the short term vision, it's at least here for the U.S. Being able to, incorporate, a lot of the features and functionality that we see will be beneficial for our athletes, but even getting into the point where some of the aggressive goals that we've got, and even in the public institution of education, part of the challenges that we see today, the two things that end up getting cut in public institutions due to budget is art and sports, right? And so, if there's a way that we could, independently, approach these, city and local level, you know, uh, entities and school educational institutions, and approach them with this type of platform that allows them to be independent of the state budget and allow that kind of budget to go towards the teachers and their salaries and school books and all of the necessary things that are important for the kids, while Sports Hero kind of becomes the staple for sports, in either public institutions or private, is going to be kind of our long-term goal, which I think we're very poised, and I can see it definitely happening for the company. And ultimately, what it at the end of the day, what it ultimately impacts is our youth, right? And so that in itself, if you can somehow positively impact our youth, we know these kids are faster texters and faster on social media than we are, at least for me. And the word will get around really quick, and so you end up developing kind of lifelong customers if you positively impacted their journey in sports. Or then it goes back to that brand. It goes back to that, oh, you all of a sudden become that household name that everybody's starting to talk about all the time. Just like when you see ketchup, what do you think? Heinz or Hunt's, like
Yeah,
two ketchup brands that everybody knows about. So it's
exactly.
kind of like when you say sports, you think ESPN, or you think, whatever it is. So at some point, I could see us getting to that point where we become a household name that gets dropped in the sports world.
Is there any advice that you would give to emerging founders from what you've learned so far? Um, just from your own personal experience, in terms of, building out their own brand narrative or just starting up their idea and getting it out there, what would you say to those people?
Yeah, look, stay humble, stay open to learning every day. And I think most importantly, don't give up, and that's always hard to say. And my sports idol will always be Michael Jordan. And so for me, seeing how he not only led his team, but to multiple champions, but how he drove himself, you know, I think one of his famous quotes is, I've missed a lot of shots,
Yeah.
but and we all do, right? And I think that as long as you keep practicing, as long as you keep shooting, as long as you keep going, and you don't give up, you can become or build or be a part of something amazing. And so, there's that little voice that goes, yeah, it's really not working out, or your little voice that says, it's just no one's going to really like what you're thinking about, or maybe even externally, there could be some things that really are pushing you to think otherwise, that maybe I should stop this. And, whatever that might be, I think that's when you really start to feel that passion inside of you. And that passion is really, and there's no value to that. And that passion is really going to drive you to do amazing things and build amazing companies. And you've got to be really in tune with that. All the while, you got to be willing to learn and grow and listen to other people, and leave your ego at the doorstep, right? And let other people kind of guide you as they are, whether they know they're guiding you, or unintentionally sharing with you information. Like, absorb as much as you can, like become an infant again, right? Like, in the mindset of, like, that's all they do, they absorb stuff, they even put stuff in their mouth that they shouldn't, but like, all of those things. So it's super important for you to just stick with it, don't give up, and be willing to learn and grow all at the same time.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing some
My
really
pleasure.
incredible advice on this episode. I genuinely appreciate you taking the time to do this first episode with me.
My
Um,
pleasure.
so before we end off, if there's anything you want to share, let people know about, in terms of Sports Hero, or whatever you need to share, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, for all of you that either love sports, have people that enjoy sports, or even have kids or children or grandchildren, nieces and nephews that play sports, go to sportshero.org and take a look at what we've got to do, and hopefully we can make a positive impact in either your life or somebody else's life that because that's what Sports Hero is all about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Manuel. Hope we stay in touch, and thank you everyone for
Cheers.
listening.
Awesome.